Maybe you clicked out of curiosity. Or maybe, without even realizing it, you were searching for a quiet space where words come softly and silence is part of the story. I've shared this with care, like weaving together memories, pain, and hope, hoping you might see a bit of yourself along the way. If you do, even just for a moment, stay a while. Listen as long as you want. And if it feels right, leave a little sign. It doesn't have to be big. Sometimes, a simple "I'm here" changes everything. If this resonated, a like or a share helps keep the conversation going. And if you feel like it, hit subscribe. There's more stories waiting. It was a crisp autumn afternoon in suburban Ohio, the kind of day where the sun felt just warm enough to keep your skin alive under a cool breeze. I was 17, standing on the starting line of the regional track finals, my heart pounding louder than the crowd. This was my moment, the one race that could lock in my dream, a full athletic scholarship to the University of Michigan. Scouts were there, clipboards in hand. My coach slapped my shoulder. "This is it, Ethan. Run like you've got nothing to lose." The starter's pistol fired. I launched forward, legs pumping, air slicing against my face. The first 200 meters felt effortless. The world blurred into colors: green turf, blue sky, the shimmer of the track under sunlight. Then, as I rounded the final curve, pushing harder than I ever had. Snap. A sound ripped through the air, sharp and wrong. A searing pain shot up my left leg. My stride crumpled. I remember my scream, raw, animalistic, echoing against the bleachers as I tumbled onto the track. The world became chaos, my coach sprinting toward me, eyes wide. Teammates frozen, mouths open, the crowd gasping in unison like one giant inhale. Somewhere, a camera shutter clicking, because in America, even pain goes viral if it's dramatic enough. The pain was instant and total, like fire spreading through bone. I couldn't move. Tears blurred the sky as I heard someone yell, "Call 911!" The sirens came fast, but time slowed. Lying there on the stretcher, I locked eyes with one of the college scouts in the stands. He looked away almost immediately. That cut deeper than the break, like I'd just watched my future walk out the door. The EMTs lifted me into the ambulance, strapping me down. The world outside the back window blurred as the siren wailed. My heart was racing, not just from the pain, but from fear. This wasn't just a broken leg. This was my golden ticket, shattering right in front of me. "Mom! Dad!" I called out, half conscious, half hoping they'd come running like in the movies. I imagined my mom's perfume, my dad's hand squeezing mine. But there was nothing. No familiar faces, just the sterile ceiling of the ER, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. And for the first time, a thought crept in, cold and sharp as the metal of the stretcher. What if they don't come? When I opened my eyes, everything was white. White walls, white sheets, white ceiling tiles broken only by a flickering fluorescent light. For a split second, I couldn't remember where I was. Then the pain in my leg hit like a sledgehammer, and it all came rushing back. The track, the snap, the siren. My mouth was dry, and the first thing I whispered was, "Mom!" My voice cracked. No answer. I tried again, a little louder. "Dad?" I kept imagining they'd burst through the ER doors any moment now, faces pale with worry, Mom clutching my hand, Dad trying to stay strong, but failing. It's what parents do in the movies. It's what I thought parents were supposed to do. Instead, the only person who came into the room was Kelsey, a young nurse with tired eyes and a messy bun. She smiled softly and said, "Hey there, champ. You had quite the break. Clean fracture of the femur. We got a rod in there to keep it stable." Her voice was calm, like she'd said this 100 times before. She held out a paper cup of ice chips. "You've been out for a few hours. Any family coming?" I nodded weakly. "Yeah, I think so." I waited. I stared at the doorway, expecting to see familiar silhouettes. Every shuffle in the hall made my heart leap, then sink. Minutes stretched into hours. My phone was on the bedside table. I grabbed it, hands shaking, and saw one missed call. It was a voicemail. I pressed play. My mom's voice chirped, cheerful and casual, like she was leaving a reminder about picking up milk. "Hey, honey, we're not gonna make it to the hospital today. Your sister's college orientation got moved up, and she's really nervous. It's a big deal for her. I'm sure you'll be fine. You've always been so strong. Love you." That was it. "No? Are you okay?" "No. We'll come first thing tomorrow." Not even a picture of my dog to cheer me up. I just stared at the screen. The room silent except for the faint beeping of my heart monitor. My chest tightened until it hurt worse than my leg. That was the moment it hit me. Not just the pain, not just the fracture, but the truth. Their love had conditions. If it was Emily, my perfect sister, the pageant queen, the honor roll prodigy, they would have driven across the country without blinking. But me? I was the strong one, the afterthought, the kid who would survive on his own. My eyes burned. I bit my lip hard, but the tears still came, hot and silent. Kelsey walked in to check my IV. She saw me trying to blink the tears away, and without a word, squeezed my hand. For some reason, that small gesture from a stranger broke me more than the voicemail did. I turned my face toward the ceiling, blinking at the harsh white lights, and for the first time, I felt completely, utterly alone. Recovery wasn't a single moment. It wasn't the dramatic, "I stood up and walked again," you see in sports movies. It was 4 long months of pain, routine, and silence. The first few weeks were the worst. My left leg was wrapped in layers of plaster and metal, elevated on a stack of hospital pillows. The slightest shift sent shocks of pain shooting up my spine. I learned the hum of the IV machine, the patterns of the hallway lights, the squeak of nurses' sneakers. And I learned the sound of silence, the kind that fills your chest when you're waiting for someone to care, and no one comes. My parents texted occasionally. "How are you feeling? Don't forget to do your PT. Emily just moved into her dorm. She looks so happy. Keep being strong, champ." It was like I'd become a side note in my own life, while my sister was the headline. By the second month, I was home. Mrs. Wilkins, our elderly neighbor, became my unofficial caretaker. She helped me shuffle from the bed to the bathroom, reheated frozen dinners, and even paid for one extra physical therapy session when insurance wouldn't cover it. One night, I was scrolling through Facebook and my stomach twisted. There it was, my parents' latest post, Emily beaming with her campus map, standing next to a college mascot, captioned, "So proud of our girl. Next stop, greatness." Meanwhile, I was in the background of my own life, sitting in a dark bedroom, leg in a cast, staring at my phone. No pray for our son. No, he's in recovery, please send love. Not even a picture of me smiling through the pain. It hit like a second fracture, one no doctor could see. Around month 3, I caved and called my dad. He picked up on the second ring. His voice was cheerful, distracted. "Hey, bud. How's the leg?" "It still hurts. I've been doing therapy every day. I kinda thought you'd maybe come by." There was a pause, the faint sound of a TV in the background. "Oh, yeah. We'll visit once things settle down. Emily's got a big week with her sorority stuff. You're okay, right?" I froze. The words "you're okay, right?" were like a polite exit from the conversation, not a lifeline. "Yeah, I'm okay," I lied. "Good, good. Proud of you for being tough." The line clicked dead a minute later. I stared at my phone, the screen dimming in my hand, and made a decision that felt like closing a door. I stopped calling. I stopped expecting them to show up. I stopped hoping they would suddenly see me. Nights were the hardest. Lying in bed, the room dark except for the streetlight filtering through the blinds, I'd stare at my casted leg and feel like a ghost in my own house. The track had taken my dream. My parents' silence had taken my heart. And for the first time in my life, I understood. If I wanted to get through this, I would have to do it alone. I started keeping a journal 2 weeks after that last phone call. Not because I wanted to, but because I had no one else to talk to. The first page was shaky, messy, just scrawled fragments of pain. 2:17 a.m. Leg throbbing, can't sleep. PT today was brutal. I almost fell off the crutches. Mom texted, "Emily got into the honors program. No mention of me." Writing it down felt like leaving footprints in the snow. Proof that I was here. Proof that this happened. The entries got longer. I wrote about everything. The humiliation of asking Mrs. Wilkins to help me shower. The dull ache of lifting my leg 2 inches during physical therapy. The way my chest tightened every time I saw my parents' names on social media. I documented each milestone like a scientist observing my own survival. Day 41. Took 12 steps without crutches. Day 68. Knee bend at 90 degrees. Pain level 7 out of 10. Day 92. Still no visit from mom or dad. It wasn't just journaling. It was collecting evidence, a record of every moment they weren't there. Something started to shift inside me. The loneliness was still there, heavy as ever, but it was changing shape into anger. Not the kind you scream about, the quiet kind. The kind that simmers in your chest and makes promises to yourself. I will never need them again. I will never give them the chance to make me feel small like this again. Every PT session became fuel. Every time I lifted my leg against the resistance band, I pictured myself lifting out of their shadow. Every ice bath, every scar massage was a reminder that I was rebuilding myself. Alone. By month 4, something unexpected happened. I got curious. One night, while icing my leg, I fell down a YouTube rabbit hole about sports injury recovery. I watched videos of athletes rehabbing ACL tears, broken tibias, dislocated shoulders. I started Googling terms like femoral rod recovery and muscle atrophy rehab. I wanted to understand the machine that was my own body, how it could break so fast, and how I could make it stronger than ever. The anger had turned into obsession, and the obsession became a direction. I wasn't just going to heal. I was going to master this. And in the back of my mind, a quiet voice whispered, "One day, they'll see me. But by then, I won't need them anymore." The acceptance letter came in a plain white envelope. No confetti, no balloons, just a thin piece of paper that I held with trembling fingers, reading and rereading the words. "Congratulations, Ethan Miller. We are pleased to offer you admission to Ohio State University Kinesiology program." It felt like the first breath after months underwater. I hadn't just survived. I'd found a direction. I told my parents that night over FaceTime. My mom's face lit up for a second, then immediately softened into something neutral. "Oh, that's nice, honey. Maybe after a year you can transfer to University of Michigan, closer to Emily." My chest sank. Of course. Even my win had to orbit around her. I smiled anyway, out of habit. "Actually, I think I want to stay here. They've got one of the best kinesiology programs in the state." Dad just nodded, glancing off screen like he was checking his email. As long as you're happy, champ. The call ended. I sat there in my room, holding the acceptance letter like it was a shield, and I made a decision that felt like breaking free of gravity. I would stop chasing their approval. I would build a life they couldn't ignore, but I wouldn't need them to clap for it. College was nothing like the polished brochures. My dorm room smelled like a mix of ramen, socks, and industrial cleaner. The twin bed creaked if I exhaled too hard. My 3 roommates were strangers. One was a gamer who stayed up until 3 a.m., another played the guitar badly, and the last one collected protein powder like it was gold. But it was mine. I bought a cheap whiteboard and wrote my first goal in thick marker. Walk across the graduation stage on my own 2 legs. Life as a kinesiology major was brutal, but thrilling. I spent mornings in lectures about biomechanics and human anatomy, afternoons in the campus PT lab, and nights blending smoothies at a local gym to cover expenses. Some nights, I'd limp back to my dorm after a long shift, my legs still sore if I pushed it too hard. I'd sit on my tiny bed, heat pack on my thigh, scrolling through Instagram. There she was, Emily, posing in front of sorority banners, holding latte art, grinning under the stadium lights with her new college friends. Meanwhile, I was sweaty, broke, and sore. But for the first time, I didn't feel like the loser in the story. I felt free. Free from the expectation to perform for someone else's pride. Free to chase something that was finally mine. That night, I wrote in my journal, I'm still alone. But maybe that's not the worst thing. It had been a full year since the day my leg snapped on the track. A year of crutches, therapy, sleepless nights, late shifts, and living in a dorm that smelled like microwaved burritos. And in all that time, my parents had not visited me. Not once. So when they finally texted, "We're driving up this weekend," my stomach knotted with a strange mix of hope and dread. Saturday afternoon, I heard a knock on my dorm door. I opened it to see Mom and Dad, smiling too wide, holding a bouquet of grocery store flowers and a box of donuts. "Surprise!" Mom said in a sing-song voice. "We thought we'd finally see how our tough guy is doing." I stepped aside and let them in. The room suddenly felt smaller, filled with the scent of Mom's perfume and the faint, dusty smell of my dad's coat. They handed me the flowers, and for a split second, I wanted to believe this was a visit born of love. But then Mom pulled out her phone, already scrolling through pictures. "Oh, you have to see Emily's new internship office. And look, her sorority just voted her social chair." She spun the screen toward me. There was Emily, glowing in every frame. I forced a smile and said nothing. We sat on the edge of my creaky dorm bed, making small talk that felt like chewing dry toast. Then, out of nowhere, Dad chuckled and said the sentence that would stick in my brain for years. "You've always been the strong one, Ethan. Never gave us a reason to worry. Emily needs more attention, you know? But you're fine on your own." I froze. My chest tightened. Fine on my own. It wasn't praise. It was permission to neglect me. Without a word, I reached under my bed and pulled out 2 things. The X-ray of my shattered femur, taken the day of the accident. My journal, thick with pages documenting every lonely therapy session, every sleepless night, every milestone I'd hit without them. I set them on the desk in front of them. Mom's smile faltered. Dad went quiet. "This is what fine on my own looked like," I said, my voice steady but low. "This is what it took for me to get here without you." For a long moment, the only sound in the room was the hum of the mini-fridge. Finally, Dad cleared his throat. "Well, we didn't realize, anyway, we should get on the road. It's a long drive." They left with the flowers still on my desk and the donuts untouched. When the door closed, I sat back on the bed, my hands shaking. But it wasn't from sadness this time. It was clarity. For the first time, I felt like I had reclaimed a piece of myself, even if it left the room heavier than before. They had seen the truth, and they couldn't look me in the eye. After that awkward visit, something inside me shifted. I stopped waiting for my parents to show up or even notice me. Instead, I focused all my energy on one thing: getting better and smarter about it. That year, I poured myself into my studies like never before. I devoured textbooks on human anatomy, sports medicine, and physical rehabilitation. I spent late nights in the library, surrounded by empty coffee cups and scribbled notes. For my senior project, I decided to tackle something personal: the impact of recovery neglect on long-term athletic rehabilitation. Using my own experience as a case study, I examined how lack of support affects recovery outcomes. When I presented my paper at the university's annual research symposium, I saw something I hadn't felt in a long time: recognition. Professors nodded thoughtfully. Students asked questions. One of my professors even wiped tears from her eyes. Afterward, I was invited to speak at a regional conference for student researchers. For the first time, I was not just Ethan Miller, the kid with the broken leg. I was Ethan Miller, the advocate, the survivor. Meanwhile, back on social media, things weren't going well for Emily. Her once bright and bubbly Instagram was now peppered with cryptic posts, quotes about trust, disappointments, and fake friends. Rumors swirled among our family and friends. She'd dropped out of her program, struggled with roommates, and was having trouble figuring out what she wanted. It was a stark contrast to the glossy highlight reels I'd seen just months before. I didn't gloat. I just kept building my life. One step, one paper, one late-night study session at a time. The day my name appeared on the dean's list for the 4th semester in a row, I got a message from my cousin in the family group chat. "Did you guys know Ethan's been killing it at school? Like, really killing it." Soon after, I received a text from my mom, short, simple. "Wow. Why didn't you tell us?" I stared at the screen, fingers hovering. Because I did tell them, I just don't think they ever listened. I replied with a screenshot of that voicemail from the hospital, the one where they said they couldn't come because of Emily's orientation. No reply. I put my phone down and smiled softly to myself. For the first time in years, I realized I didn't need their approval. By the time I graduated, I had co-founded a small startup, a mobile physical therapy clinic aimed at bringing affordable injury recovery to underserved communities across Ohio. Local papers ran stories about our work. I gave interviews on podcasts. I was invited to speak at community health events. My name was finally out there, not as that kid with the broken leg, but as someone making a real difference. One gray Tuesday afternoon, my assistant forwarded me an application. The name caught my eye: Emily Miller. I frowned. Was it a coincidence? I glanced at the cover letter. "I'm passionate about helping people recover and want a second chance to contribute meaningfully." She didn't mention who she was or that she knew me personally. I assumed it was a coincidence, until I scheduled the interview and saw her walk through the door. She looked smaller than I remembered, tired, almost fragile. But there was still a flicker of the girl who'd once lit up every room. The conference room felt heavy when I stood up and said her name. "Emily?" Her eyes widened. She swallowed, voice barely audible. "Ethan? Is that you? You're the CEO." I smiled gently, the power of the moment settling over us. "Remember that day you called from the hospital?" Her face paled. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. It wasn't a trap. It wasn't a showdown. I could have used my position to humiliate her, to remind her of every moment she wasn't there. But I didn't. Instead, I said, "This is a chance to start over, for both of us." She nodded slowly, swallowing the lump in her throat. That day, she wasn't just interviewing for a job. She was stepping into a lesson in humility, respect, and second chances. And I was ready to see if she was ready to learn. Emily started on the bottom rung, answering phones, filing patient records, shadowing therapists, tasks far from the spotlight she was used to. At first, she kept her head down, moving silently through the clinic halls, avoiding eye contact with most of the staff. She didn't complain when patients overlooked her, or when coworkers celebrated my birthday with cake while she quietly stood at the edge of the room. Months later, after a long day running a mobile clinic in a small town, we rode back together in the van, exhausted and silent. The hum of the engine filled the space. Then, softly, she spoke. "Ethan, I'm sorry. I should have been there when you fell. I should have called, visited, done something." Her voice cracked, carrying the weight of years of regret. I didn't reply. Instead, I reached into my bag and pulled out a photo. The X-ray of my shattered femur from that awful day, taped to a note I'd written. Sometimes the worst breaks lead to the strongest foundations. I handed it to her. She stared at it, the fight draining from her eyes. Then she nodded, quietly accepting the unspoken message. We never rushed to be friends. There were no grand apologies or dramatic reconciliations. Just two sisters, flawed, wounded, but trying. Showing up each day, side by side, rebuilding something neither of us knew how to name. The night my startup won the Innovators in Healthcare Award, the auditorium was packed with industry leaders, journalists, and advocates. When the TV cameras rolled and the host introduced me to a live national audience, I felt a strange calm settle over me. Midway through the segment, the host paused and said, "Ethan Miller's story isn't just about innovation, it's about resilience. Let's listen to a voicemail left for him on the day of his injury, a message that shaped his journey." The screen behind me flickered to life, playing the cold, cheerful voicemail from my mom. "Hey, honey, we're not coming today. Emily's college orientation got moved up. You've always been so strong. Love you." The audience gasped softly. The camera panned to the crowd, then slowly to the front row. There stood my parents, faces flushed red, caught between pride and silent regret. I stepped up to the microphone, my voice steady but full of meaning. Sometimes, to take the strongest steps, you have to learn to stand up on your own, from the darkest breaks and the deepest silences. A wave of applause filled the room. As I walked off the stage, the spotlight warmed my healed legs. No longer just broken bones, but foundations. That night, I knew I had finally walked past my past, and I never looked back.